Hello everyone. Today we will be seeing the game which had the best move ever played in chess history. This move was so good that the spectators watching literally showered gold coins on the board. This game was played between Stefan Levitsky and Frank Marshall. Let's get straight into it.
So, Stefan Levitsky was white and Frank Marshall was black. Stefan started off with d4. Marshall responded with e6. This is the Horwitz defense. We have e4 and white transposes the game into the French defense. Black played the main line by playing pawn to d5, and in here, white chose to play a side line by playing knight to c3. Marshall tried to counter-attack in the center by playing c5, and white develops his knight to f3. Black also develops his knight to c6, and white takes on d5. Marshall recaptures. Bishop to e2 played by Stefan. A much better move here would have been bishop to b5, pinning the knight to the king, and also developing the bishop to a much more active square than e2. But white chose to play e2. We have knight to f6 by Marshall. White castles, and Frank decided to play bishop to e7. His idea is to castle on the next move. We have bishop to g5 played by Levitsky. As expected, black castles, and white takes on c5. Bishop to e6 played by Marshall. Here, he wouldn't want to take on c5 because after bishop takes f6, queen takes f6 and queen takes d5, white would have been a full pawn up, and also he would have had a better positional advantage. Therefore, he chose to play bishop to e6. Now white centralizes the knight by playing knight to d4. The bishop now recaptures on c5 and knight takes e6. Marshall recaptured with the f-pawn and the bishop attacks the pawn on e6. Of course, black can't take on g4 because you lose the queen. So queen to d6 played by Marshall, defending the pawn on e6. Bishop h3. Stefan did not want to give up his bishop for the knight. Now Marshall gets his rook into the game by playing rook a e8. Queen to d2 played by Levitsky, centralizing his queen and also connecting his rooks on a1 and f1. Bishop to b4, pinning the knight to the queen. Bishop takes on f6, eliminating any ideas of knight to e4. We have rook takes f6 and the rook comes to d1. Queen to c5 played by Marshall. We have queen to e2, an interesting move by Levitsky, because he's simply giving up a pawn and Marshall took it. But white immediately gets the pawn back by playing rook takes d5. This is a nice little tactic, because if black takes, we have queen takes e8, rook f8 is forced, bishop to e6 check, king to h8, and queen takes f8 is a beautiful checkmate. Therefore, black plays knight to d4. Now we simply can't just move the queen away to d1 or to some other square apart from the e file, because black can simply take. But in this position, Stefan Levitsky blundered by playing queen to h5. This seemed like a very logical move to everyone because it attacks the rook on e8 and also saves the queen. But this turned out to be a huge blunder because now black can play rook ef8. Now he simply has a lot of attack on the king, especially the doubled rooks. Also the knight can jump in and the queen is also eyeing the king. And in this position, white will also have to waste a tempo because the rook is attacked. And that's exactly what happened. White had to save the rook. And now guys, we have rook to h6. This move wins a piece. Let me show you how. In the game, white played queen to g5. Now the crazy rook sacrifice. Rook takes h3. The idea is if g takes h3, we have knight to f3 forking the king, rook and the queen. And if you don't recapture, black will simply be a full piece up. And also if white tried to play queen to g4, there would have been knight to f3 check, another sacrifice. If g takes f3, we simply get the rook and we would be a full exchange up and Marshall would easily win the game. So after queen to g5, rook takes h3, white played rook to c5, trying to create some complications in the position because white was a full piece down. Now comes the craziest move and the best move of chess history. Can you all find it? Let's see. This move is going to shock each and every one of you. Even all the spectators got shocked. That is why they showered gold coins on the board. Black sacrificed the queen. Queen to g3. What is this move? The queen can literally be captured in 3 different ways. And none of them works. Let me show you how. If the h pawn takes, knight to e2 is already checkmate. If the f pawn takes, we have knight to e2, king to h1 is the only move, and rook takes f1 is a mate. And finally, if the queen takes, we shouldn't take on g3 because then white can just recapture and there'll be an exchange up. Therefore, we play knight to e2, king to h1, and now knight takes g3. The f pawn can't take because it's checkmate, and taking with the h pawn is not possible because the pawn is pinned to the king. Therefore, king to h1 king to g1 is the only move. Now we can just play knight to e2, king to h1, and we can play rook to c3. We'll be a full piece up, and Marshall would have easily won the game. Therefore, all the way back in this position after the stunning queen to g3, Stefan Levitsky resigned.